everybody. Greetings. It's been a long time since we've done a Workbench Wednesday. My name's Ryan from Lionel. Did not plan on doing this tonight, but sat down at the workbench on a little project I'm working on here for Lionel and realized, oh my gosh, it's Wednesday and I'm at the workbench. And that means I should probably be recording this and doing it as a Workbench Wednesday. So glad to have some of you with us. I hope you all get a chance to jump on and see what we're doing. It's that time of year again when we're all talking trains and getting things ready. Absolutely our busiest time of year at Lionel. And so never really know for sure when I'm going to have a chance to do these right now. But the opportunity was there and thought we'd jump on tonight and see how this goes. And we'll get it posted back up later on as a video to add this to the library. So what we're working on tonight is one of our HO kits. And we decided we wanted to have some more of these around as nice demonstration pieces for photography and things like that. The kit that we're building tonight, we're actually not going to be doing too much work on the kit itself, but is, let's see here, 2167030, a warehouse kit. And I started building the kit, but I reached a point where I wanted to plant it in the scenery. And this is probably something that a lot of people run into on your own layouts, especially if it's a more permanent layout. Now, if you're setting this up underneath the Christmas tree, you might not want to put plaster on the carpet. But if you're doing this on a train platform and want to anchor your building in and make it feel like it's really planted there on a foundation and not just sitting on top of a sheet of plywood, these are some simple techniques that you can use. And so because of the long overhang on this roof, I figured it would be easier to actually do some of this work now before I finish the kit. So let me take a look here, show you, swing it around and show you the kit itself. Now this is going to be a bit more challenging because I am just on my phone tonight, so hopefully this will work. But you can see here, I've got the building for the most part started with walls and foundation done on the base that comes with the kit. But we're adding some plaster around this to get it into the scene. And to do this, what I'm using is ordinary drywall plaster. You can get this at any hardware store. Get a big bag of it. Get the dry mix. You can use the pre-mixed stuff, but I like to use the dry mix because you can control the consistency much better and the drying time and so forth. And if you want, sometimes you want a little bit more runny, sometimes you want a little bit thicker, and you have a lot of ability to control that yourself when you buy it in a powder. And it doesn't take long to mix it, and you can mix it in small batches. I just used a little cup's worth here tonight to mix everything together. Started off on this side, it's going to be the pavement end. The other side of the building will be the track end of operation, so not as much plaster over here. But I just smear a little bit around here and there just to create some ground form as well. And you can use the same undercoat for everything, whether you're making a mountain or making a city. It all comes in handy. If we're doing pavement, we obviously want to get it somewhat more smooth. So after putting on the first coat and letting that dry while I ate dinner, I came back and just put on a very thin skim coat over top to get things relatively level. And as you can see from the color here, it's still not perfectly dry, but that's okay. We're going to take it to the next step here and smooth this out a little bit more. Now, I'm going to mount the camera up top here on my light. Let's see how this works. Hopefully this will show well for all of you. Get the angle right here. And how's that looking on there? Okay, good. You can see my workbench is a complete disaster as normal. We've got the piece in front of me, and now what I'm going to use is just a piece of tore off a little section of grout sponge. I always have some of this around on the layout because it's good for, usually I've been using it lately more for painting than anything else, but tonight we're actually going to use it for what it's designed for, and that is smoothing over this plaster. I'm just dipping it in my dirty paintbrush water, and I'm just going to rub this over my road surface and smooth out some of those bumps. Now you could also do this once it's completely dry. You can do this with some sandpaper. This way is a lot less dusty and messy. So that's why I'm using the drywall sponge here and doing this wet. Now I'm trying to get it more or less smooth, but I am not particularly concerned if it is perfect because I'm going to be adding in some bumps and cracks and potholes and you name it in this road. This is not going to be a freshly paved bit of asphalt by any stretch of the imagination. So we're just going to smooth it out a little bit. You can do this pretty much at any time. You want the plaster to be fairly well firm to the touch, but not. If it gets all the way to dry, you can still work it. You just need to use a little bit more water, and you just sort of take your time with it. If you find that it's not smoothing out as much as you want, you add a little bit more water or a little bit more pressure, and just keep working your way wetter and firmer until it starts to move around on you and give you the look that you're after. And then you don't go too far with it. So if there's any big spots, I'm going to work on getting those out. Once this dries completely, if there are things that you don't like, places that you spill, like for example here, I got a little bit on the side of this building. Once that's completely dry, it will just flake right off. And so it's easier actually to clean some of these things when they're dry. It's water soluble, so even after that, you can just come through, flick off what you can, wipe off the rest with a damp paper towel, and your cleanup's really easy. So don't be afraid if you get things a little outside where you wanted them when you're doing this plaster work. All right, now that usually I like to let that sit and dry for a while. There is nothing more fun than watching paint dry or plaster dry, so I'm going to speed it up a little bit with a hair dryer here. So we can move on to putting a little bit of color on this. To give you some sense, there's probably about a 1/16 of an inch or so worth of plaster thickness on this. The thicker you layer it on, obviously the longer it's going to take for it to dry. But this is a decent thickness. You also want to build up in smaller. If you build up in thinner layers, it also reduces the amount of cracking that you're going to get. Sometimes the cracking is good, but I prefer to try and get it nice and solid and then add the cracks I want with a knife later on, as opposed to taking it to chance. Speaking of that, again, you can wait till it's completely dry or do things when it's a little bit damp. But if we want to start adding some cracks to our pavement, we can do that. Use the knife. I'm actually going to use the back edge of the knife here so that I don't get too sharp of a line, and just start chipping away. And this is pretty quick and easy to do. It won't look like much right now, but once we get some paint on here, it'll be a little more apparent. It's sort of hard to see when you're just looking at a bare white or gray surface. And I'll probably come back and add some more. Actually, not probably. I will definitely come back and add some more later to that. But just in the interest of time and getting some color on here, I'm going to go ahead and put on a first coat of paint. For this first coat, I am just grabbing a random gray that I'm finding on the workbench. Because what we'll be doing is adding layers of paint and stains to build up the overall color. You probably won't get to see all of this happen here tonight, but we will do some of it and get you the basic idea. I'm just going to put a little bit of paint down there on the surface. I'm going to break off another piece of my foam sponge here. Just dip it in there and just start painting around. You can add some paint into the basic plaster mix as well if you wanted to color the overall plaster. I typically don't. I usually just do this all after it's on and dry. This is working well for the big areas. To get in a little closer to the building, I'll probably get a small brush, get a little more paint out here. Don't aim for perfection here. This is our first base coat. we're going to put a lot of other colors and stains and washes over top of this. So again, if you get a little bit outside the line, not a big deal. Over here in some of the other areas that will eventually be dirt and grass, I will put a base coat of color under there too. It won't be this same color, but we'll definitely get a base coat of color. If I get some gray in there, at this point, it does not matter. It'll all get covered over. Okay. With that on there, let me get a small brush and get it in a little bit closer to the building. Unlike the plaster, I'm going to try and keep the paint off of the side of the finished structure. When you have a kit that has a molded base, like most of Lionel's kits do, you can use those. They're great to help in the assembly process, keeping everything square, and they give you a little bit of a footprint and a way to blend things in. You can also sometimes do without if you want to build your own foundation for the building, sit it in a different environment, or just treat things a little bit differently. You don't always have to use the base, but if you're going to, it's very easy to blend in, as you're seeing here. And I just worked the plaster all the way around it to help tie it all together. The molded in base has some neat little cobblestone details that are sort of peeking up through the road, and I'm going to try and retain some of that here. That's why I went a little bit more thin over this part of the base. They're going to disappear under the gray paint, but we might bring those back out later with some more paint and highlights to give it a little bit more story. At one point this was a cobblestone street. Now it's been modernized and paved over. All the paints I'm using, by the way, are just acrylic craft store paints here tonight. You'll see me using most of the very cheap, very easy to get, easy to mix, easy to clean up, and they cost you usually less than $1 a jar. So perfect for this kind of thing. Now, while the paint is still a little bit wet, I'm going to go ahead and start dabbing in a different color. I'm going to use some raw umber. I'm not really sure how this is going to work, but we're going to give it a shot. I'm going to use the same sponge. And if usually there are comments and things coming in, hopefully there are. Hopefully this is actually going out there. It's been a while since we set one of these up, and usually I have the advantage of my computer and not just the phone. I will try and get some to your comments if you're asking questions here in a little bit. Right now, keeping my hands free to do the actual work. Okay, so here you can see just dabbing in the paint and sort of mixing things together. I'm greatly changing the hue of what we have here. I'm going to try and get that as close to the building as I can without making a total mess. Don't be afraid to make some areas a little darker than others or different colors. That's what makes the model actually look better. Trying to be perfect will ruin the model. You want to give it some variety and some different shading. That's how things get in real life. Nothing stays the same all the time. So grab another brush here. Just sort of work this in again, closer to the foundation. This has been a fun kit to build. I'm actually building 2 of these at the same time. One's going to go to the office and one's going to go on my layout. I thought, hey, it might be faster to build 2 at once. Nope, not really. starting to look pretty grungy. Let's add in, that's a very runny black. Black is tricky. Black is a very powerful color, so this may or may not turn out the way I want. The paint I'm using here has been thinned down a good bit, almost like a wash. I know I want some darkness in here. I think because it's still wet enough, this is going to work, and it looks like it is. You have to be very careful when you start adding black into your paint mix. A little bit goes an awful long way. You can see here the change I've gotten in that overall color, and that was just from dipping the sponge in the end of the cap here and picking up what little paint got on there to blend it in. It does not take much at all, and the black goes a long way. Because it's so thin, need to get a little more in there. If you don't have a layout, you can see here, this is just about maybe a 1 foot by 1 foot square of 1-inch foam that I'm using for the base of this little mini diorama for this display kit. And this is a great way, if you enjoy building kits, to just give them that extra little bit of a finishing touch and display them on a shelf, on your desk, wherever you have the space or the inclination, or use them this way on your layout and build several sections and move them around this way. You could use a slightly thinner base, of course, if you wanted to. So lots of options in the hobby. You don't have to just think about building a large model railroad. You can see here coming in a little stronger with the black right up against the building, and that's definitely a different texture and color. But what I'm going to do is use that to my advantage and not go solid with it here, but make it look like we've got some patches. And just blend it in a little bit. Now, before I go too much further with this paint really should dry all the way. At some level, you're going to need to start mixing things together, and you want to stop mixing things rather and start adding new layers. So before I would put a wash over this, this color needs to really completely dry. This layer needs to completely dry, and then we can come over with some different colors and highlights. I'm just going to come back over and dab a little bit more on here and just change the overall look up a little bit, because I know I'm coming back through with a black wash, so maybe I'll just lighten it up a little bit here. Also, if you've taken the time to carve in a lot of details, the more damp you get this, the more some of those things will start to work their way out. You can actually start to eliminate them. But you can still see here some of those cracks that I did first off are still nicely input. If I go through and do a new crack, now that it's been painted, you will see the white comes through underneath. And that's okay, because we're going to stain this. So that'll all go away. Makes it much easier to see what you're doing now by having it painted first. Don't worry about the white showing through, but this is why some people do prefer to put a little bit of paint or pigment in with your plaster as you're mixing it, so that it dries a grayer color overall instead of stark white. And we could just be sort of random with this. This is going to be a pretty beat up lot, I would think, with all the trucks and wagons using this a lot, so weathering is good. Again, I'm just using the back of the knife here so that I'm not really slicing into it, just sort of scratching off the surface. You can do as much or as little of this sort of detail work as you desire for the scene that you're trying to create. Let's see if I can find any of those cobblestones underneath there. Okay. So that's going to sit and dry. Once that's dry, I will come over it with a stain. And the stain I'll use first on this to get all those shadows is going to be a black wash. Now, you can make one of these yourself. I've been using lately Viterro stains from Best, B-E-S-T models. These are pre-mixed. They're an alcohol-based stain. They come in over a dozen colors now, and they work beautifully on plaster and wood and you name it. Because they're an alcohol based, you don't want to put them right over wet acrylic paint. You want to let that dry completely, or if possible, even seal it with some clear coat, a clear coat of dull coat or something of that nature to keep it from washing off your undercoats. But it works very well to soak into these cracks and things. But again, you want it to be dry before you put that stain on there. You can also mix up your own. I've described this in past Workbench Wednesdays. This is some isopropyl rubbing alcohol, just with some India ink mixed in. You mix it as dark or as light as you want, and you can apply that directly over your wash. Works great for bringing out details in scenery, in models. It just highlights, or should say the reverse of a highlight, it really low lights all of your shadows, puts your shadows in for any of the recessed areas. And then you can come back through and dry brush over top to get your highlights and add a lighter coat to the top, so you get more dimension into the overall model. While the paint's drying there, let me sort of spin the model around, talk about what we'll be doing over here. And we won't get to this tonight. We'll keep this kind of short and sweet. But over the rest of the model, we'll be adding in dirt and ground cover. And to do that, use a variety of materials. But we'll start with just a basic layer of white glue on the base itself, then sprinkle the ground cover over that. And we've done this in the past on the program, and then finish up with a little bit of a mist of alcohol to break the tension, and some 50-50 white glue and water to soak in and lock everything into place. That's how we'll do some ballast around the track, some dirt. We'll add weeds and all that good stuff. You can use any variety of materials you'd like for that. Some of it you can buy commercially. For example, we can buy blended turf and leaves. You can also make your own. Perfect time of year to do this. Go out, grab some old leaves, some dried up leaves off of your yard. Next time you rake leaves, put a few in a bag. An old blender, not the nice one you're using for holiday meals. Throw those in there, or a little coffee grinder, grind them up, make yourself some dried up leaves, perfect for sprinkling around your scenes as ground cover, and you can't beat the price. So just some easy ways to add dirt and ground cover and life to your scene. By the next time we come back and do this again, I'll probably have this whole scene finished and you can see what that looks like complete. But this should give you some sense of what you can do to help plant a structure on your layout. That's the other thing I should mention too, is I'll be putting the dirt and things right up against the building, right along the sides. These will all be covered over by large roofs that have a big overhang. Pull that out of the kit here so you can see. Once I put that roof on, getting in underneath here to do this work becomes much more difficult. So if we go ahead and do some of this work now, It just makes life a lot easier. There are some small awnings and stairs and porches and things like that that go around here too. Trying to get the dirt underneath, for example, this stairwell that will sit on this side of the building will be a bit more of a challenge. So we'll sprinkle that in and then sit this part of the structure in place once it's completed with its weathering and so forth. If you take a little bit of time with a basic kit like this, add some paint, add some weathering, add a little detail around it. Doesn't cost a lot of money, just takes a little bit of time, and you can create something that is unique and different and very realistic. So I hope that gives you some inspiration for some projects this season as you get started on your new train layouts or you're continuing working on your existing ones. We are at the height of the model train season. We've got a lot going on at the office, as I mentioned at the start of things. We've got you there. And things are arriving at the office now every day. So if you're waiting for your new trains to come in, trust me, they are on their way in and out as quickly as we can turn them for you. It's been wonderfully busy at Lionel over the past really all year, but especially these last couple of months. And we've got a few more busy weeks to go. So looking forward to having everyone see something special underneath the Christmas tree this year. And hopefully we'll be able to get back and do some more of these Workbench Wednesdays pre-announced and on a more regular schedule here in the very near future, for certain after we get through the holiday season. We'll have a lot of things to talk about and maybe help you build some of those new trains and accessories that you picked up from Santa Claus this year. So thanks for jumping in if you caught this live stream, and look forward to seeing you on the next one. Take care, everybody.